this is an example of the screenshot for creating the assignment rules. So here I'm actually creating my rule, which is a post-bill explicit rule. Then over on the right, where it says results revenue contingency, I'm actually linking it to a contingency definition I've already created. So I'm going to tie this to my post-bill explicit contingency. Then on the lower regions, I'm going to give it criteria. When do I want this rule to apply based on what type of information? This is a list of seeded criteria that I can use. A user had asked if the list of values could be extended, and I'm not familiar with the capability of extending it, but that could be something to be reviewed in the quick codes or the lookups on the receivable side of the fence in terms of setups. By default, these are the ones that are seeded, and you would just go ahead and say, okay, I want to do bill to customer business world. And then I want to then say, okay, whenever it's business world, go ahead and apply this. Here's an example of the rule once it's actually been saved, and going forward it would apply. So it's telling me that, okay, here's my rule. It's tied to this contingency. The criteria are bill to customer of business world. So it's going to automatically apply for any transaction that I actually put in my system for business world. The caveat on this is to know that, remember when I went over the setups, the order management setup, the very first one that I said was critical. If you do not set that up, enable fulfillment acceptance, if you do not set that to Y or yes, it doesn't matter what you set up in terms of the rest of order management and or AR, nothing will function. The API and NAR will not be called, it will never default anything, and none of your customer's acceptance functionality will occur. All the data entered in those fields will just be informational if you do not do the first setup. Now we've gone over the definitions and the basic description of the customer acceptance functionality. We're going to go over now the process flow and processes review. Now we're actually going to go over the process flow for customer acceptance. This is actually a very involved flow chart, and we'll go over through both types of billing / acceptance as well as the basic standard order flow. So remember that this customer acceptance is all on the premise that you have completed all your required setups to actually have it processed successfully. And the setups are the basic blocks over on the left-hand side of the screen. Now if we go through the process flows, we'll start out at the enter and book sales order. And again, we've done our setups. So once we enter and book our sales order, it's going to go out and check based on the AR API, it's going to go check all our sales order lines to see if there's anything to be defaulted in from the assignment rules side on the contingency definition. That stuff will default in as applicable. We'll go through our sales order, pick release it and ship confirm it. And then once we complete the ship confirm, remember that's where our statuses change from normal Oracle workflow in terms of order management and or customer acceptance. So we'll go awaiting shipping to shipped if it's standard, and if it's acceptance, we would go awaiting shipping to pending pre-billing or pending post-billing customer acceptance. So we'd go into the queue and actually say, okay, is this sales order related to customer acceptance? If it's not, it's just going to go straight down and go right into the auto invoice queue and go ahead and create revenue recognition just as it normally would through its workflow that's assigned to the sales order line. If we go back up and it says, okay, yes, we do have to perform customer acceptance, then you have to go into a couple additional questions to actually determine what type of acceptance you're going to be processing. How are we going to hold our billing? Is it going to be before invoicing or after invoicing? Pre or post billing? If we go into post billing, we're going to go down the bottom side of the decision box and go straight into auto invoice, because again, we're doing our acceptance after billing, after invoicing. We're going to create the invoice just like normal, and from there the dotted line you'll see comes out and goes back over to the acceptance queue saying, okay, now how am I actually going to complete the acceptance process? From there you have options again. Are you going to perform explicit or implicit? And remember, explicit is manual or programmatic, and implicit is programmatic only. On the post billing, if we elect to go explicit, we're going to drive out the right side and go into the, okay, we're going to record it. Are we going to do it manually via Order Information Portal, the OIP, or programmatically through Order Import and Process Orders API? Once the acceptance is recorded, it's going to drop down and the dotted line will come out of the acceptance box because it will be completed, and then it will actually recognize the revenue. So this is what I was talking about earlier. Initially, after we create the invoice, it goes into the unearned revenue account by default. And then once the acceptance is completed, then the monies in the unearned revenue account would get credited, and then they would get debited to the appropriate revenue account. That's post billing. If we go back up in our example, our order is pre-billing, we're going to accept it after, we're going to accept it before we invoice, before we recognize the revenue. It immediately just goes over into the acceptance queue. And again, has to determine what type of acceptance will be used to complete it. If it's implicit in this example, let's say it's pre-billing implicit based on the event of customer ship confirm date, and the expiration day value is 14. So 14 days after ship confirm, if this has not been accepted, the system will go through running the concurrent programs and automatically accept this based on that criteria. Based on the expiration period value, it's going to keep going through that decision queue saying, okay, have we passed the 14 days yet? Have we passed the 14 days yet? Have we passed the 14 days yet? Once we've passed that time, and the key is, it's not just days, it's the date and timestamp value. It has to go completely days and hours past what was initially transacted on that ship confirm date. It's going to fall into the process acceptance program box, and then the implicit process for that would run, grab that subset of data, and flag it as accepted. And you'll notice that that line then kicks over into the auto invoice box, because remember, this was pre-billing. We didn't invoice and we didn't recognize revenue. So it's going to create the invoice and then as a result recognize the revenue consecutively.